Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky here in the beautiful city of Centerville, Iowa in Appanoose County. Appanoose County was formed on February 17th of 1843. It was named after a Squaxin chief, Appanoose, who was the son of Chief Tama, and his name means Chief when a child. Now, Chief Appanoose was born most likely around Prairie du Chien in what is current day Wisconsin in the early 19th century. He lived along the Iowa and the Des Moines rivers when his tribe migrated from Wisconsin into the Iowa Territory. He opposed the Black Hawk Wars and even visited Washington, D.C. along with Chief Keokuk in 1837 as a peace envoy, trying to show solidarity with many of the people who opposed the Black Hawk Wars on the Indian side, who wanted to seek peace with the white settlers and the United States. Sadly, though, his grave and most of his information is lost to history. He was relocated to what is now Franklin County in Kansas, and he is buried in an unknown, unmarked grave in Appanoose Township in Franklin County. It's a sad loss for someone who actually did portray a lot of important aspects of the resettlement and the treaties that took place here in Iowa, allowing Iowa to become a territory and then a state. It's one of these things that we need to be acknowledgement of, that this type of stuff happened, and we should probably try to see if we can't locate him. Now, the courthouses here in Appanoose County, the very first courthouse here was built in 1848 on the corner of West 12th and State Street for a cost of $160. That building lasted from 1848, but by the 1860s it was really unusable. And they built the second building they started building it in 1860 at a cost of $23,000. It was 99.5 feet tall, including the cupola, and it was 2.5 stories of usable space. Unfortunately, though, the July 4th celebrations of 1881 got a little bit out of hand, and they ended up burning half the building down. What remained of the building was known as the Sheep Shack, and they tried to continue to use it for a number of years. It just really wasn't feasible, and by the early 20th century, it was knocked down, and they started building the building behind me. The third building here cost $90,000, up from the $23,000 they built the second building, and they started building it in May of 1903, and they finished it in September of 1904. In 1975, the clock tower you see behind me was struck by lightning. Yes, very much like what happened in the Back to the Future trilogy. And they took some time to fix it. I always used to say that Back to the Future stole the idea from Centerville. Now, the square here in Centerville is unique. One of the big advertising parts of the square when this new courthouse was built was the fact that it's the world's largest square. Now, the reason why that is that when Centerville was plotted in 1846 by Jonathan Stratton, he took the square, which in most towns is only a single city block. He made it a 2 city blocks in distance, basically, for towns, which in a real city, I mean, this is actually a full city block. Like if you were talking about like bigger cities, and you would calculate to most towns only being like a half block. So basically, it's double the size of what other cities in the state of Iowa were being plotted as. Now, if he did this on purpose with the forethought of this, it's unknown. But some of the historical aspects of town is that every spring, everyone in their nice clothing would get out here, and the streets were all wood. They were mud, and they had sawdust thrown over them, and the sidewalks were all made like wood planks, mostly recycled old buildings. And they would, in these nice Victorian dresses and their fancy suits, would come and they would trot the ground down with these big wooden planks, and they would replank all the way down the square. It was a big hootenanny and activity that everyone in Centerville celebrated, and they absolutely loved it. This took place throughout most of the 1800s. Like I said, Centerville was founded in 1846, but it wasn't called Centerville. It was known as Chaldron. It was a really hard name to pronounce. but Centerville wasn't his original name. In 1855, when they go to change the name, they tried to rename it after William Tandy Center, who was the one-term congressman in Tennessee, Tennessee's 2nd district, who basically was a minister in agricultural figure in far eastern Tennessee. He was very popular, and a lot of immigrants and people from other states, people who migrated here, were from Tennessee, and so they tried to change the name to Centerville with an S, as his name was spelled. But the people at the Secretary of State's office in Iowa City at the time looked at that. Well, maybe they're doing it wrong. Actually, in 1855, it had been Des Moines. So in Des Moines, about that time when they were relocating, they saw it and looked at, maybe that they misspelled it, so they put it with a C, giving it the name Centerville, which played into aspect in the early 90s when a great reminiscent hitch of Clydesdales traveled across the United States, both east and west, and the only place that had to stop twice was Centerville. And there used to be, up until they redid the square, gold horseshoes from these Clydesdales. Now, when they redid the square in the early 2000s, they mistakenly removed those, and the monument plaque that talked about it was later on removed. As far as the city of Centerville, it was charted as mostly a coal mining area. All the communities in Centerville were coal mining. Cincinnati, Mystic, Plano, they were actually one of the top performing coal mining communities in the entire state and the Midwest. It was, not quite as productive as Mahasset County, but it was one of the leading producing coal counties and communities in the entire country. Now, as the 1930s came into being, coal and the demand for coal and the quality of coal in this part of Iowa wasn't as of good a quality, and the demand was quickly dropping. And so the community had to quickly find another way of keeping their economy. I mean, don't forget, this place was filled with immigrants from Croatia, Sweden, Germany. Most of these surnames and family names are still present here in Iowa today. And funny little interesting tidbit, when I worked for the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services, which oversees Medicare and Medicaid, I got a call from someone who I can't give you his name, but he was born in Centerville to Croatian parents on January 1st, 1900. And the part of the city that's known as the Levee from Prohibition and Al Capone, his family built several buildings that are still there, and he remembers managing them in his youth. And he was quite old at the time, and I wasn't even near Iowa or Centerville at the time when this conversation happened. So having this conversation with someone who lived in this town that I have lived in for a long time, I don't live here anymore, but it was kind of a surreal experience of how small the world really is. And so that's kind of a connection I have to some of the buildings here with people that were living all over the country. And after the 30s came to pass, the city struggled for another way of income. So they were pushing throughout the 50s and 60s for a dam, and they decided to dam the Sheraton River in the Rathbun area, giving the Rathbun Lake its creation, which was dedicated on July 31st, 1971. There's a couple of really important things about Centerville. This was actually one of the manufacturing hubs of this part of the state. Other than Ottumwa, this was the heavy hitter for manufacturing in southern Iowa for a long time. In the early 2000s, you started seeing a lot of this manufacturing starting to want to leave and relocate, displacing hundreds of people here at work in Appanoose County. And in a state that routinely had some of the lowest unemployment in the country, Appanoose County and Centerville had some of the highest unemployment. It does have also sad note is that in a city of this size, the county's got around 15,000 people in it, 12 to 15,000 people. The city of Centerville's got around 7,000 or so. A state that has one of the highest graduation rates in the country. Centerville is known for having some of the lowest in that area, and I think that the community needs to reevaluate some of this stuff so they can bring those numbers up, because with the highest unemployment and some of the lowest high school graduation rates, that's not a recipe for success. And this town does matter to me, and so I really want to emphasize to all the people in Centerville that are watching this to please try to find a way that they can reinvest into this community. A couple other things I want to talk about is that a lot of the businesses here on the square have started to shift. They did push this big push for this cultural center here in Centerville to try to keep families from moving away as the manufacturing left. But towards the later part of the 2010s, they had shifted their direction and desire towards more of a retirement community. I can't stress this enough how bad of an idea this is to continue on to this policy of having a retirement community, because a neighboring community, a much larger one, pushed for that in the 1970s. And now that town is a joke throughout most of Iowa, that no one ever wants to go there. And if anyone who's watching this video knows the exact town I'm talking about. That town had a massive industrialized base, but when they pushed for this huge idea of a retirement community, they lost everything. As families had to leave Centerville because of lack of opportunity, their parents and their grandparents, when it comes time for them to retire and leave their homes, they're not going to stay in town. They're going to move closer to their loved ones who can't relocate back to Centerville because of their economic opportunities in the new town that they're living in. If you have any doubts about this, just ask yourself, where are most of the retired high school and junior high educators that from Centerville? A lot of them moved to Florida, the Lakes of the Ozarks, up into Indianola. There's a lot of them moved to Iowa City. A lot of the people that were educators, the people who had a really important role to play in the fostering of the culture and the heritage of the people of Centerville to its citizens, leave. They're not even staying. And so I think that should be played a part into the city's desires and thoughts about this. Because if you look at it, if they focus everything on a retirement community in today's world, here's some things I want you to understand. You're looking at people that are living on a fixed income in a time where property taxes are going up and the fixed income amounts are not. Increasingly are the cost of these fixed income people with their health care costs. Now, as you increase the property taxes but keep their wages the same but increase their medical costs, and you also have record low interest rates, and they're forecasting through the Federal Reserve that they could even have negative interest rates in the very near future. This retirement community, their income, their disposable income is based on the interest they get from their savings deposits in the bank. At those negative interest rates, if the population is also aging and dying off, and you're not really focusing on getting new money to come into the economy to bolster what they call the economic multiplier effect, your community is slowly going to collapse. And this is something that I know a lot of people in Centerville watch these videos. I know a lot of people in Centerville have reached out to me to talk about things like the loss of the Daily Legion, a paper that was here for almost 140 years, that there's a closure of a lot of really important Centerville icons. But when you look at some of the leaders of this community over the last 20 years, 30 years, when they retire, they're not staying here. They're going down to Lake Thunderhead, or they're moving out to Lake Rathbun. One of the biggest icons from when I grew up here was J&K Market, that's no longer here. You know, you're looking around, there's only, I think, 2 places that I even remember from here. There's Brown's, there's Shoe Fit, there's Photography by the Browns, and then there's Owl Pharmacy and Jim Ireland's. Everything else is kind of new, and the great antique shops are great. I like antique shops, but these markets aren't geared towards the main earners here in the state, in this part of the state, which are manufacturing. How many men and women do you know that are working 12-hour shifts at a factory are going to want to come antiquing at the end of the day or on their days off? Their interests are very, very different. They have a different needs, different entertainment needs, and that's what the city of Centerville should be focusing on. Focusing on things that these people can consume as for entertainment and for commerce. And that's my encouragement for the city of Centerville. I know this video is getting more than to just the history of Centerville and Appanoose County, but this is a community that matters a lot to me, and I want to make sure that the community survives, because what we're dealing with now is going to be very hard to come through if we don't act. And this goes to every single community in Iowa. This isn't just a local problem. Appanoose County is routinely in a race with Muscatine County, Decatur County, and Van Buren County of being the poorest counties in the state. And this is a manufacturing hub, and it's still known to being a very, very poor county. You're having increased demands as pushing for the retirement community for EMS and ambulance services, but you're not having anyone earning a taxable income to bring in tax revenue to pay for it. This is a very complicated issue, and I hope everyone in the city of Centerville who watches this video and comments on it, shares it, discusses it, and subscribes to my channel and to my other channel, which I will put in the description, because we're gonna have to do it together. The city of Centerville is regiments during the U.S. Civil War are the regiments that took out Vicksburg. Governor Drake, who was from Illinois, who founded the city of Drakeville, and now Drakesville in Davis County, settled here in Appanoose County before the war, became a Civil War general, became a governor. Drake Avenue is named after him. The reading room he founded is now the Drake Public Library. There was a lot of sense of pride in this community at the time, and we did a lot. The city of Centerville, Appanoose County, and Davis County, those regiments held down the state of Missouri, primarily preventing them from being able to secede. They held down Sterling Price and General Marmaduke, a past and at the time future Missouri governor, keeping the state of Missouri in check. When it came time to the Honey War, the dispute between Iowa, well, at the time Wisconsin, then Iowa, with the state of Missouri, it was Davis and Van Buren and Appanoose counties, these people, who actually helped keep this part of Iowa. When it came time to the bleeding Kansas, it was this part of the state, Appanoose County, Davis County, Monroe County, Wapello County, Mahaska County, the Hairy Nation, that made sure that Kansas remained a free territory and then a free state. If you travel through Kansas, you're going to see lots of towns named after southern Iowa towns, because we're the ones who made Kansas a free state. It was a bloody battle with the people of Missouri over Kansas, and Iowa won that battle. The people in these communities won that battle, and that's something that I want people to think about today. We're looking towards the future of Centerville, the future of Appanoose County, Davis County, Wayne County, that these communities shouldn't die out. There should be a lot of investment by the members of this community to say, this is the type of entertainment I want to see. This is the type of businesses I want to see. And then not only say that, but create them yourselves. We have actually a really nice bookstore here on the square with a good coffee. I tremendously support it. I'm going to try to bring some authors here to do book signings. We have a really nice, Jim Downers with great men's clothiers. We can still get, brand new shoes here without going to Walmart. We have the infrastructure on the square to be a leading economic drive in this part of the state. Wayne County is adding on to their East Penn manufacturing facility, but they don't have any housing. Centerville could take control of that by making sure housing is more accessible and more affordable to people that are moving into the state from somewhere else to work in neighboring counties. That's something that a lot of people in Davis County do. They don't work in Davis. They travel to Centerville, they travel to Wapello. We should be a destination place for employment for not only these neighboring Iowa counties, but for Missouri as well. And we need to work with our current manufacturing facilities to not leave. There was a facility, it changed its name, so it started off as Viscase, and then the Kerwood, then Bemis. It's now been transferred to another company because they keep trying to pull out. And the city of Centerville has said, no, we're not going to let you, we will not let you mistreat our your employees, our residents. We're going to stand up. And this is something that everyone in this community should be proud of, and they should be pushing to bring more manufacturing in, because the more competition you have for jobs, the more people who come here for jobs, the higher the demand for the labor, the wages will go up. And as the wages go up, the tax burden for each individual will go down. And as we bring in new blood, we'll be able to keep our community strong. We'll be able to keep our square in the good condition that it is. The Centerville and Appanoose County, Davis County, Wayne County, Monroe, Lucas, I believe in this part of the state very, very deeply in my heart, and I know that we can be one of the leading aspects of not only this state's economy, but the national economy. And I'm asking everyone in Centerville and Appanoose County to put their work boots on, to get their gloves on, and let's go to work. Let's make this the leading community and model community for not only everyone in Iowa, but the rest of the country. This is Nathaniel Gavronsky from the world's largest city square in Centerville, Iowa. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay wise, and as always, stay classy, Iowa.